What's up, everybody? Ryan Michael Ballo here to do a video on uridine, monophosphate, and triacetyluridine and their potential to enhance brain function over the course of the time that you're taking them, and then as well as to use either one of those substances as a maintenance nootropic for the foreseeable future. And I want to kind of compare this experience that I've had, I kind of give you a story about it, with the life of Rita Levi-Montalcini. She's an Italian Nobel laureate who won the Peace Prize in 1986 for discovering nerve growth factor, and took nerve growth factor for like 30 or so years, 30 to 40 years, until she died via eye drops in her eye to cross the blood-brain barrier. The interesting thing about this woman, as some of you might have seen or heard on the Live Cortex Nootropics podcast where we talk about Rita Levi-Montalcini, I think it's 002 on the podcast, is that her brain functioned super well late into her later years. I mean, she's been seen at age 97 giving interviews about the most scientific stuff, and she's like in pristine mental order. All right, so here's the story. I've been taking Cortex, the Cortex stack, for like 8 months. In total I probably took it 8 months, nearly every day. And that was through the formulation process and then a little bit thereafter, because I had to find the ingredient quantities that worked the best for me, that worked the best for the beta testers, so that I could put out a product I was comfortable with. Through that process, I was taking Cortex every day, and my brain was just super optimized the whole time. I in fact think that it helped me to formulate the product faster. It's like I'm formulating the product with the product's ingredients, with the product, and it's making my brain work better at formulating the product. Product. And so one of the things that I came to recognize, that I wrote about on a blog post on the Live Cortex blog, where essentially we talk about cholinergic dominance versus acute cholinergic dominance, the latter being where you seem to have induced a state of entirely too much acetylcholine floating around in your brain. You've got symptoms like tiredness, lethargy, and other things. And the other, cholinergic dominance, long-term cholinergic dominance, is where seems to be, at least this is strictly theoretical for me, but I think there's a good reason to suggest that this might be happening in the background, where you've got a potential myelination, continued myelination of axons and dendrites. Myelin is this fatty substance that's made essentially from choline. Continued production of phosphatidylcholine, or just a large amount of phosphatidylcholine, because the two ingredients in Cortex that create phosphatidylcholine do so in a major way, CDP-choline and uridine monophosphate. And as a result of that, there are elements of your brain function that just seem to be working better residually. Verbal fluency is a major one of them. Working memory is a major one of them. Processing speed is another one. Focus capacity is another one. I mean, I used to not be able to sit down and focus for 3 hours at a time on something, and now I can at baseline. So one of the things I discovered about the state that I put my brain in from taking Cortex for so long and having the uridine monophosphate and the CDP-choline work on my brain in a reparative manner from damage I might have done to it, like growing up and being in my teens and being an entrepreneur and being stressed out, as well as enhancing the acetylcholine profile in my brain, enhancing the phosphatidylcholine synthesis in my brain, springboarding the enhancement of neurite outgrowth, which is another very impressive thing that uridine monophosphate does, as well as changing and modulating positively dopamine and acetylcholine receptor densities. It's like I put myself in a place where my brain just functions really awesomely residually. But the interesting thing, and what I want to talk about, is that these days, what works super well for me is a maintenance dose of triacetyluridine. Triacetyluridine is a more bioavailable form of uridine monophosphate. Not by a whole lot, but by enough where you can take substantially less of it and get the same effect. And so where my dose of uridine monophosphate is roughly between 130 and 170 milligrams, depending on the day, I really only need to do about 70 milligrams of triacetyluridine, and I do that sublingually. And I'm going into theory land a little bit here, but I think that I have myelinated the nerves in my brain quite a lot from using CDP-choline and uridine monophosphate. I think that I have created an abundant amount of phosphatidylcholine, which helps in the fluidity of my brain's function. And I think that just in order to maintain that degree of great functionality and have a continued optimization over baseline, in addition, triacetyluridine in 70 milligram doses as a daily maintenance strategy works wonderfully. Now, if I were to do something completely anti-cholinergic, like take 1,000 milligrams of oxyracetam or any one of the racetams, or smoke pot or something, or drink a whole bunch of alcohol, all of which affect the acetylcholine system in a way where you start to deplete acetylcholine, then I might have to essentially take more of this, or just go back to taking, full-blown 2 capsules on the Cortex stack rather than 1 capsule, which is another way of maintenancing for me. But I tend not to do any of those things. I drink maybe a little bit every now and then, a few beers every now and then, and it works out just fine. But sometimes, I will say, it is interesting to completely reset the acetylcholine system in that way by taking moderate to high dose of aracetam without a choline source. You just take a gram of oxiracetam or a gram of vaniracetam or 2 grams of whatever, 2 grams of piracetam, no choline source. That'll start to take acetylcholine levels down. And then if you need optimization to get them back up, you could pick the Cortex stack, you could take uridine monophosphate and CDP choline together in the right dose that works for you. You could take triacetyluridine, you could take alpha GPC, you could take a host of other cholinergics. But biased as I am, I have to say truthfully, I actually think that the uridine monophosphate and CDP combo is one of the best ways to achieve that. So going back to the idea that essentially I am, did I just like touch the mic? Anyway, going back to the idea that I am attempting to mirror the behavior of Rita Levi-Montalcini, who discovered nerve growth factor and used it to improve her brain over the course of years, 30 or so years, to the point where she was in her late 90s and early 100s, still functioning mentally like a 20-year-old college student. I think that triacetyluridine is a powerful component to facilitating kind of a similar outcome in the brain. I mean, it's all about staving off decline, right? It's all about making sure that the brain's major systems, acetylcholine, phosphatidylcholine, are working correctly. As you age, I imagine dopamine receptor densities and acetylcholine receptor densities start to decrease. This helps you to keep them increased. I imagine that the fatty substance surrounding axons and dendrites called myelin decreases as you age too. A good choline source or a good combo of the right ingredients that facilitate phosphatidylcholine and work on the general acetylcholine system contributing myelin to the nerves is a way to fix that. And overall, I think I like to finish on the idea that it's really awesome to have your finger on the dial as a biohacker, as a cognitive biohacker. You know your acetylcholine levels are too high, so you can take them down with a racetam. You've taken them too far down with a racetam, because you took 2 grams of oxiracetam. Oh well, you experimented, you found out, and now you feel like you've got a little cholinergic deficit. So now you take something like Cortex, you take something like triacetyluridine or uridine and CDP, or like the Mr. Happy stack on longevity, you take alpha GPC and uridine monophosphate and DHA, and then you get your levels back to where they need to be. But it's just awesome to have your finger on the dial to be able to sort of modulate between cholinergic surplus and cholinergic deficit and or cholinergic baseline. Very awesome stuff. If you've not tried the Cortex stack, snag a bottle on livecortex.com. You're gonna love it. The stack combines uridine monophosphate, CDP choline, artichoke extract, and Bacopa monnieri. There has been some really positive reviews about it so far. It's been kind of making its way through the nootropics community in a very interesting fashion, and I think you're gonna love it. Otherwise, we started a podcast on iTunes. If you've got your iPhone or if you've got an Android device, you've got a smartphone, whip out your phone, go to the iTunes store and search for Live Cortex. You will find the podcast, put it on your favorites list, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to this channel here, and hey, talk to you next time.